Every week we do a Q&A with interesting and accomplished members of the adaptive community to find how they persevered, how they innovated, how they built communities, and how they found solutions. Welcome to the Nametags Chat Podcast. All right, welcome to the Nametags Chat Podcast, where we talk with interesting and accomplished members of the adaptive community. Today we have Dave Kiley, who's a gold medalist in wheelchair track, in wheelchair basketball, in Alpine skiing. He's a tremendous athlete in tennis, in water skiing, and a variety of different things, and was recently, and I mean recently, last weekend, was inducted into the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee Hall of Fame. Dave, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
It's awesome, Chris. Thanks for having me.
So cool to see you guys get inducted last weekend. What was that like for you?
You know, I've tried to describe it probably 100 times to different people since last Friday night, right? And it started that Friday night where I made a few phone calls and I was, oh my God, this and that, you know, and but it's in its own place of, you know, the top of the mountain, the pinnacle, whatever you want to call it for sport, the presentation, the organization, all of it, Chris, the pride that I came away with was staggering, you know, and I still am just kind of shaking my head, and the social media frenzy still kind of continuing, you know. It's like, yeah, so I'm living it, I'm loving it, and in my sport life, there's nothing that's ever gonna come close to that night and that distinction.
It was amazing, and you had such a great class as well. I mean, you're talking about the Paralympic class where like Trisha Zorn, 55 Paralympic medals. That's a crazy number. That's a huge number. Muffy Davis, great in two sports. The 2002 hockey team. Then you had like Michael Phelps, you had Lindsey Vonn, you had Mia Hamm, Roger Kingdom. You know, I mean, just an amazing, and I'm forgetting some people right now. Was there anybody that you looked at and said, that's the person I want to meet? Because you're inside the velvet ropes now, right? You're a peer with people who in some ways were heroes.
Absolutely. You know, and I gotta say, I had a target on every one of those that you mentioned, and Michelle Kwan.
Oh yeah.
You know, because I grew up, or you know, I watched them all at their heyday. You know, and Olympic memories of that kind are never forget kind of memories. You know, and so I knew I was going to meet Lindsey Vonn just because of ski racing that you know, and I don't know about you, I would presume I love the speed events, you know, and so I had a little interaction with her about speed, and she was really nice and complimentary about the acceptance. And so anyway, but I wasn't satisfied until I got all those people in a photo, had a conversation, and you know, so, and I was successful. You know, you and me took a picture with Dorothy Hamill. You know, I didn't expect the likes of Spencer Haywood, Lenny Wilkins, Teresa Edwards. You know, I thought it was just going to be the inductees, but there were plenty of other of different classes there, and again, people that I kind of truly followed and to a certain extent even idolized.
So you like the little kid with the baseball going to the game, trying to get everybody's signature kind of thing?
Dude, I was such a kid that night. I mean, I planned on it. You heard me even say it, you know. I didn't care, you know, and I was that guy, you know. I just kept looking around. Oh, I gotta go, you know. I wait for a break because you know, they're getting inundated for the most part, but they were really cool to me, and tolerated the request. You know, Michael Phelps even came back after he saw our photo together posted and said a couple kind words, you know, and I was like, wow, dude, tell a lot from a guy that, you know, just by a couple words, you know, you tell the story about who you are. And I go, I really appreciate it. And thanks for the awesome photo op, you know? So yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, because you have your class, right? I mean, you guys are going to be a class forever, but it's also, I mean, like a guy like Michael Phelps, you think, oh, like he has no reason to interact with us in some ways. But he seemed completely, I was amazed. I mean, I had that little like 30-second speech or whatever at the beginning, and he's like nodding along and everything. And I'm like, wow, like Michael Phelps is like full on into this. That's the cool part, like the peer part and the fun part. What was it like for I mean, like your wife was there. What was it like for her? Because she's seen everything.
She's been a part of everything, and yet again, she's been left behind more than she's been a part of, you know, because she was holding down the most important thing, that was our home and our children. But you know, a funny story was with the Phelps and his kids. I don't know if you picked up on it, but when they introduced me, I think the 4-year-old thought they heard David Coyote. And so he hollered that twice. He's like, David Coyote. He said it again, you know, and I'm like, all right, do I go with this? I already got a little bit of humor coming right out of the gate, you know. So I just left it alone. But then I was told afterwards, yeah, that's exactly what he hollered from the Phelps row, you know. I thought that was hilarious. But you know, my wife and I look at it, we're as one, you know, in this stage of our marriage after 40 some odd years of marriage. And we're still talking about the great time together that we had there, you know, and she felt the power of the moments. And you know, Michelle Kwan just kind of, they cozied up and just kind of talked like Michelle Kwan was a neighbor or something, you know. And and my wife's so proud. She's been checking all and more social media than I can keep up with. And so she deserves so much credit, Chris. I mean, you know, anybody that goes elite and is gone and hits the road globally, you know, you're leaving somebody behind, and they're sacrificing while in order that you can achieve. And my wife's the true picture of that story. Yeah.
Yeah. And Michelle Kwan, I mean, you're talking about her. She's now going to be the ambassador to Belize, right?
I think I heard rumor of that. Yeah.
That's what I heard that night, that she's going to, I mean, what an amazing thing as an athlete to go from being who you are as an athlete to then who you're going to be for the rest of your life. And obviously you've done that, but can we go back a little bit to where you started? I mean, John Brewer was posting a bunch of photos at one point from like Sports and Spokes, so the old black and white photos. And I kept looking at these going, that looked like such a cool era, like back in the 70s when you're taking your chairs and chopping them up and trying to add this and trying to add that and trying to make it faster. What was it like in that era?
Well, you're exactly right. And first of all, it's a head scratcher how John Brewer just continued to fire those photos out one after another, you know. And I think it stimulated the people that joined that group on Facebook, because everybody started to throw what they could find. You know, I didn't have that much, but you know, in Southern and Northern California, there was a lot going on with track and racing and road racing. And so it seemed like we were always from San Diego to San Jose, competing in the California games. And there were some legendary foundational technology things going on then, with center of gravity and smaller push rings. We were the era where the smaller push ring came into play, and that was Rod Williams and Steve Scott. Those guys.
And that's when you're still pushing like stainless steel chairs, though, right?
In the 70s. By the time we started to bloom into a few, in 76, it was, putting bigger balloon wheels on the front end. But we had a 17-inch push ring on this chair, and literally that chair in a relay, I can't remember where I was in. I think I anchored it, but we traded that chair out because we only had one that had the 17-inch push ring. So when you cross the line, you jumped out of that, and then the racer that was going to come back was, had to be in the chair for the racer coming back, and and I really attribute it to my 100-meter. It was a Paralympic record at the time, and it's 19. What
was the time?
19
fastest 100-meter guy, right?
Yeah, but Ray Lewandowski out of Rochester, New York, had beat me for about a year straight prior. I mean, he was just a flat, fast man, that the chair just going down, we still, it was still in the early days, but I had the smaller push rings in the 100 meters. He did not, and he blazed out, and I go, oh crap, man. He at 50 meters, he was ahead, but then that smaller push ring kicked in, and I took him. First time I ever beat him, and I'll never forget that one. We had such a great 19.1.
19.1.
Which was fast then, obviously, because it was a record, but not by today's standards. I mean, but it was a modified everyday chair.
And the push ring difference that you're talking about, that's effectively like going from being in first gear on your bike to being in fifth gear. So he started faster because it was easier to turn that over.
Yeah.
But then he reached his max speed and he couldn't go any faster. And that's when you blazed by him. Where did you go by him? It was like 60, 70, 80 meters. What kind of?
Yeah, it was more probably like, 60 to 70, I think I caught him at 50, and then it just kind of turboed me into the finish and to win, but I expected that, I knew the premise, he's going to be on top of those wheels and he's going to have a great start. I'm going to come out a little slower. Don't panic and just, stay the course. And so that was a very successful first Paralympics in 1976. They didn't even call it the Paralympics at that time. It was the Olympiad for the disabled. And so I didn't really, at 21, I didn't really place like this phenomenal, I'm racing for my country. This is the biggest thing ever, it wasn't really like that. The facilities were a little, they were new facilities in Toronto, but, there weren't many people there, especially at the track. There was in basketball, but yeah, so I really didn't know what I was doing. I come away with 5 for 5, and I challenge Arnie Bolt. He's a Canadian that first amputee to get over 6 foot in the high jump, right? And we're both nominated for athlete of the games. Well, the games were in Canada, and you know,
get a little hometown advantage.
Well, you know, I'm not going to say he didn't deserve it, you know, and in print it says we were both kind of right there, so that's good enough for me now, you know. But yeah, and subsequently, I hate to say it, I lost those gold medals. I mean,
No idea where they
no
are.
idea. You know, they weren't much to look at, to be honest.
Right. But the significance now, yeah.
Yeah. The significance changed exponentially, you know, from then to now. And again, I was just young and naive too, and but it all came together, and you know, and 6 Paralympics later, I'm carrying around a bunch of hardware, you know.
Exactly. Looking at that stuff that John Brewer put up, I kept thinking each time I saw it, it was like I felt like there should be a movie, like from that era, not a documentary, but like a narrative movie, a dramatic movie that's based on that era. And if they did that, what would your role be? Not necessarily what like if somebody's playing you, what would your character be? Like, who are you? I mean, the Southern California
character
guy.
would be Southern California surfer hippie dude that was fast and loved to compete, you know. And that era, and those players, when I say players, the racers, you know, Gary Kerr, Rob Williams, Steve Scott, you know, to a certain extent, a little bit later, Brad Parks, Jim Martinson, John Rudolph. There were all kinds of good. Jim Knob, battled with Jim Knob, you know, and to beat him, it took a really smart, strategic application to stay with that guy. So, you know, we're all running into each other a lot, and we're all drafting each other just the same way that, you know, today's racer does, you know. And you saw some of the trains in those John Brewer photos, you know, and everybody's chair was quite a bit different. You know, I think I had a quickie titanium frame, you know.
Was it California versus the rest of the country kind of thing? Was it Southern California versus Northern California? I mean, is this like rap kind of thing where it's like, you know, East Coast, West Coast deal, or what's
I
what's
think
the
it's
deal?
more, it was more East West, you know, because we found ourselves North and South collectively putting together relay teams and, you know, wanting to dominate, which we did most of the time, or actually all the time. We had some heavyweights out in Cali, and but yeah, it was East versus West, and or California versus Texas. It seems like that's always been kind of a rivalry in whatever sport.
Was Randy there at the same time? Randy Snow, the same time as you, or
Randy? Yeah. Well, he came a handful of years later. Okay, and as did Brad. But no, Brad was earlier than Randy. But yeah, we hit I think it was the University of Washington. We had a national games up there, and man, everybody was there, and except for a crowd, you know. Crowds didn't come out back then, you know. It was you and your racers and family and friends, you know. But still, it was powerful memories from those times.
Who would the other characters be? I mean, you talked about Knob to a certain extent. I mean, who went on to a great racing career. I mean, what, like, didn't he had some interaction with like Fonzie on Happy Days too, right? I mean,
Yeah,
didn't he
he
have
got
like a
into
fight with Fonzie or something?
yeah, I think so. I mean, but there were a number of wheelchair athletes that went the Hollywood direction, and it was brand new, and you still were trying to fight public perception, and yet some people still were able to be accepted into certain roles, and Jim was one of them, and there was a Long Beach veteran VA guy, that Lou Carrillo. He got into some movies, and then Coming Home with John Boyd and Jane Fonda, about the Academy Award winner. That movie was big and filmed in Southern California in the VA system, and it brought all wheelchair athletes in for a little payday and cameo appearances, and so Southern Cal had that element, that you could you might land an extra spot or something.
What did that feel like? If you're landing that extra spot, is that kind of making it into the mainstream? Did it mean you'd sort of arrived, that you were accepted? Is it just a payday?
No. It was more than that. We had John Voight coming to our practices. He was very deliberate in trying to understand wheelchair basketball, and then all these guys were vets that I was hanging out with, Vietnam vets, and so he was very diligent in coming to practice, and so we were hanging out, and this is going to crack you up, but I was being set up to be his double. His double in the
Oh no, I don't. Now I'm just saying this sounds great.
Okay.
I don't know.
His double in the love scene.
Oh,
with Jane Fonda.
Okay.
Oh yeah. So here I am, dude, and I was blonde, he was blonde, we had similar builds, and I think they were trying to do a realistic job of the atrophied legs or something in that scene. I don't know. So I'm on a closed set, Chris, in a robe with bikini skin colored underwear on, and I'm petrified. I'm absolutely petrified. And so I'm watching this love scene. I mean, first of all, it was Jane Fonda had a double, and it was somebody else, and you can imagine somebody else. So it was, thank God they chose not to use me, because I really was absolutely petrified. But that's I had some other little therapy pool vignettes in that film and little basketball thing, but that would have been something else if I had carried that around.
That stuff's easy.
Yeah, but
the love scene.
Oh yeah, no acting experience, no, let's face it, man, you're still, in your early 20s, you're still figuring some things out, so.
Were you married at that time?
No, I didn't. I met Sandy at a Final Four in Cleveland, Ohio in 1978. So, I just graduated from college at Sacramento State University, and had we met in April and married in November.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a wow. It was right.
That's quick.
I knew. And
We said you've been together for 40 something years. So you
yeah,
really knew.
yeah, we got married in 78. So I think that's what, 44 or something.
Yeah. Yeah. 44 years. That would make sense. You talked a little bit about I mean, because yeah, now that you've talked about John Voight, we're eventually going to have to make it to Talladega Nights too. Maybe we should just talk about Talladega Nights. How did those two things compare? Because there's still basketball in both of them, right?
Right. And you know, that Will Ferrell movies, especially Talladega, just lives forever. You know, I don't know how many years ago that was, 20 plus years ago. You know, they got in touch with me, the casting director at the rehab center, and they knew I had a network of contacts with athletes, and so we all had shots at what do you call them when you try out for
Like an audition.
an audition, and uh, and I was older than some of the other guys, but they still kind of let me come in and play, but or play the role. And I find myself with the lead guy. I'm D'ing up Will Ferrell, and he's just hilarious. You know, they cut out a part where you know he shoots a shot, he makes it, and now he's talking smack to me, right? Like, how you like that? I just made you my B, you know. And I'm like, I'm looking at him like, I got a little smirk. I go, dude, nobody talks to me like that, you know. And you know, and I had this little part where our speaking part that would have enhanced my payday, but you know, they cut that, and they didn't put that one part in because I think they thought it might be too offensive to the disabled community. But yet they still had two dudes kissing at the end of the movie, right?
What's going to be offensive? Yeah.
Yeah,
People are going
well,
to get offended.
yeah, but Will Ferrell, but you know, I got back in touch with him while he was here filming. I got him a limo. He came to a wheelchair basketball tournament, and was the halftime show. The place was jammed at UNCC, and then he gave us a private showing of the movie. He sent us like 50 tickets to the Coca-Cola, 500, 600, whatever it is, and sent a person out to bird dog us and show us a good time. And he was really, really cool. You know, he didn't write that $100,000 check that I asked him for, but you know, he did everything else.
Not to you personally, but to your program, I'm assuming.
To my program, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, personal donations don't happen too often.
Well, he's probably tuning in now, so maybe maybe he'll get that out to you.
I mean, you know, it's going to get out there because you know your reach is forever.
Exactly. How much interaction did you guys have when you were shooting that, though? Did you actually, was it sort of like one shot, we'll put it together, or did you kind of like scrimmage kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, we had to be there like 6 a.m. and we shot all the way up to lunch. Then we all had lunch together with all the actors, you know, Michael Clark Duncan, John C. Reilly. So it was pretty hilarious. And, you know, just carrying on a real conversation with Will Ferrell is like, I'm getting ready to bust up, you know, crack up just because I think something's coming, you know, because that's all I know of the guy. So we had some decent interaction, and that's what led to those requests that he consider doing those things for us after he left. You know, but
this is for the 3-on-3 stuff that you're doing.
no. I mean, asking him for being involved with our program and showing up for that halftime and that. But the one thing that follows me around in North Carolina is almost once a week. Dude, were you in Talladega Nights? Because that movie plays over and over and over again. And it's such a short little spot. Either people miss it or they haven't seen the movie. But and I look at him and I go, yeah, I was, 25 years ago or whenever that was. But it's pretty regular, I'll tell you. And for that little cameo, they look at me like I'm some sort of super actor or something. You were in a Will Ferrell movie. Hey, he was in Talladega Nights. I'm like, yeah, dude, for a blink.
But it's more, in some ways, it's more than like all the medals that you won in all the different sports and everything, isn't it?
What, that
appearance?
Like
you get more recognized for like Talladega Nights.
Oh yeah.
Than for all the other stuff that you actually earned, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you're not going to find out from me, first of all, because I'm just not going to tell you. I don't want to be the guy that's going to tell you how great I am, so if you get what I mean, it's just not that way. But Talladega is out there on blast, and then if it gets around, next thing you know, the same person's telling people he or she's being cool in that circle of conversation because they know, and I'm like, oh, here we go again, but it all goes in the book of experience, and find myself in the right spots in a lot of places around the globe.
Yeah. How much different are wheelchair basketball chairs now than when you started?
Well, I mean, from Volkswagens to Porsches,
or like Model T to Porsches.
Yeah. I had a fast Volkswagen in high school, by the way, but because we had to make do with everyday chairs. I mean, they actually had sports chairs, but it looked just like an everyday chair, but it had those two spots for your axles. You could move your axle, which was a grade A bolt from a hardware store, into the forward. It messed with it moved your center of gravity about 1 inch, and that made it a sport chair. Otherwise, it was an everyday chair without armrests, without push handles, and you had roller bars that you had to put on the front end to keep your foot pedals solid, right, for the contact, because they were the folding foot pedals.
And it's a folding chair, right?
Yeah, it was a folding chair too.
Right.
Yeah, but that's where innovation started to eke its way in. Rob Williams, again, came up with a camber adjustment bar in the cross members, which, would allow the wheels to camber out, dramatic. And then he took that philosophy of the 2-bar for the axles and the wheels. He built an axle plate that had multiple holes forward, and you could change your dump and or move forward. And bro, I don't care, that when I first got into those little adjustments where the chair started to really react to body movement, and that's with no strapping. We didn't strap, we flew out of our chairs, and I'm telling you, that's a lot to do with the mileage on this old ass body of mine, all breaking all those falls. And when you were young, you thought it was kind of cool, man, because you were flying, you were going to dive for a ball, whatever. But it's dramatic now, Chris. It's so high tech. the wheelchair design and strapping and positioning and custom seating, and it's everything, you know.
And 5 wheels, right? I mean, you've got a wheel in back or 2 wheels in
6
back, so
wheels.
you're not gonna...
Yeah. Most, you know, 5 wheels is out there, but they're just so much more dangerous because you get hit in that back wheel, and you know the proverbial flying squirrel happens, and it's not pretty. So that's where 6 wheels came into play, the 2 in the back, because then people's front ends couldn't hit that one and really, you know, hurt you.
Right.
Center of gravity came through with the wheelchair company that I was associated with, the Quickie and the All Court. You know, I'm sponsored now by Performex, so I'm going to make sure everybody knows that. But you know, I found the ankle, or the Jim Black sent me an ankle strap for snowboard. He worked at Quickie and a good athlete himself. And he said, here, see what you can do with this. And then, so I put 2 of them together, and there came, you know, introduced the ratchet strap, which went global, you know, and now it's just accepted, you know, it's just a piece of equipment that everybody uses. And, but that came from those days too. And that would have been mid to late 90s.
When did, are you allowed to talk about the Quickie days? Like when things started happening, like with Marilyn and
Well, sure. Yeah, it's historical, you know. So if you want me to, I can, you know. Quickie came into play after Quadra. Quadra wheelchairs was the first custom chair after Bud Rumpel and the Detroit Sparks started to just weld rigid frames together for their team. Then Jeff Minnerbreaker and Quadra came through, had custom, had anodized colors, had quick release axles, first time those hit the street. Because when
describe a quick release axle too, because most people, I mean, a lot of people who listen might not even know what that is.
Yeah, you're right. And I'm glad you asked. Okay, you heard me talk about the 70s. A grade 8 bolt is just a piece of hardware with a nut, and it's a strong bolt, but they broke all the time. So you get hit, and you'd be literally disabled for as long as it took to get that out and then put in a new bolt and tighten it down again. So a quick release aircraft kind of aluminum or steel axle came into play, where you just pushed a button and the little pins at the end would release it.
Whatever, yeah.
Yeah. And so you could just, by pressing a button, take your wheel on and off. So if you had any issues, it was just the matter of pushing a button. And again, that came from that time, and it went global. And now everybody, people don't even know where that came from, you know. And it came from Jeff Minnerbreaker and Quadra, and now it's worldwide. Everybody uses quick release axle. That's when dramatically center of gravity changed, when I got hooked into Quickie from Quadra, and it took a while for that. Again, Jim Black designed an all-court with a 5th wheel, which allowed you to dramatically move your center of gravity forward. And for those that don't understand center of gravity, when you move it forward, you're able to carve a turn by the turn of your chin or your head, and literally steer your chair without ever touching the wheels. And so it was a dramatic, if there's any one thing that improved sports like wheelchair basketball and wheelchair tennis, it was center of gravity adjustment, uh, and then combine the strapping, and then Spinergy came into play with lighter, more durable wheels, with stainless steel spoke wheels, heavy, and you'd be knocking them out in every game practice and twisting them around another spoke just to not have them. Yeah, it was crazy.
Rattling around in your frame. How much of an advantage was that? Because you said like the Detroit Sparks were the guys who did the quadra, right? So or rigid frame chairs. Did that revolutionize the sport, and was it a huge advantage versus the other teams, right? You show up and these guys have a way better chair than you do. Are they beating everybody as a result?
Well, they were really good, and they as a team, I think they had 6 or 7 national championships. They had the personnel to begin with, but then you add a custom rigid frame that could deliver a punch, take a punch, dramatically. I remember in Sacramento, prior to going to the Paralympic Games, I went, Bud Rumples was round tubing. I went to square tubing in Sacramento, had a welder, put this box frame together for me. And in that first Paralympic Games, I was actually in a rigid frame, in 76.
76 and same frame for racing and for basketball?
No, that was specifically a basketball chair. The earlier days of let me make sure I'm getting this straight. Now my age may be coming in. So within those couple of years, but to answer your question, rigid frames, that's where they began in the 1978. I went to the national tournament in a box frame chair out of Sacramento. So that first Paralympic Games, I was in the custom everyday chair for a basketball frame. And then from that came quadra. And when you threw color out there, the world just lit up, man. I mean, we had anodized chairs, and they were, as a company, and I was a sponsored rider for them and feedback guy, Brad Parks, Eric Walls, Jeff Minnerbreaker, Mary Wilson, Bogles was, they were in the shop and running that whole end of the thing, and ran that a couple years, and then Quickie came into play, and then here we are moving into this technological. All of a sudden, it's going from, like you said, Etzel to Maserati, and just a really good time. I got to witness all that and be part of all that. Most people, I stress that in wheelchair basketball whenever I get behind a mic and it's appropriate, is to really know your history of who did what. It's really important. At this last Hall of Fame banquet we had in Wichita for the National Wheelchair Basketball Association, it's like, look, where do you think that quick release axle came from that you have on your chair right now, or that click strap, or those titanium push rings, and all of it, So I think it's important, and it's one thing that in most adaptive sports is missing is your collection of and recording your history, especially technology.
Yeah. What was it like? I mean, because you talked about the technology, we talked a little bit about Hollywood, right? So there's a bit of like super acceptance with regard to Hollywood in some ways. But then what about getting court time? What about getting people to watch, getting sort of legitimacy of the sport? Because I mean, you guys thought you were good, right? How did you get other people to think to actually appreciate what you were doing?
Well, there's just these phases in my career, Chris, that, went from the 70s to, where you were totally not accepted. You were totally discriminated against. There was no equality or equity in
What did
terms
that
of,
look like? The
well, it
discrimination.
looks like, okay, like Sacramento State, I slide down to San Francisco, and I'm at the uh, I need a restroom, and San Francisco is hard to find, in especially anytime, but then especially. So I go into this bar, and because it was flat, I had to find it. And I go, man, I just like to use your restroom. And the guy goes, well, no, you have to have a drink or a beer or something, and so I said, okay, well, give me a beer then, because I really need a restroom. And the guy says to me, no, man, I can't serve you. I'm not going to have you drink this beer and then go out and kill somebody. I said, what are you talking about? He had me pegged for this handicapped person that he was going to turn down in his bar no matter what. And this was like during the day. I mean, and trust me, I wasn't drinking, man. He just flat turned me down. And that felt, now I know. And then I knew what discrimination was starting to feel like, and firsthand.
Was it different as an athlete than it was when you're just rolling around on your own or not?
Well, I mean, athletes you're more able to improvise and deal with inaccessibility. At least I was. I mean, we could jump back then. We could jump curbs that were like 12 inches tall. It would be fun for us, because there weren't curb cuts, there weren't ramps. It was a crazy time, but by the time you move from the 70s, and then I get to the 80s and I reach Casa Colina, right? The 8 national championships, and I knew by then that I couldn't count on any kind of newspaper or flyers or that kind of thing to get fans to come out. You literally had to develop a people strategy of rubbing elbows, say, we really need you there. We got to count on you. So Casa was able to fill some college campus basketball courts for television in LA. Laker girls coming into the Cal Poly Pomona to Pat Riley and some of the Lakers. We had relationships with the Dodgers. So the element of LA sports, we were able to attract a lot of people and attention that way. And by the time we hit full stride as Casa Colina, we were a great team, and people started to pay attention, but yet, still you weren't accepted. Now, I mean, we did get a LA televised game in the late 80s, and that was a first, so it's been a trail of things I forget if I'm not asked the question, but the fight to be accepted and to get coverage, you had to really work for.
Was it Marilyn at Quickie who said, if you can't stand up, stand out, with regard
She's
to
the
the
first
color?
person I heard it say it. Yeah, she absolutely was. And the combo of Marilyn, Randy, Snow, and myself, the synergy that began with the engineers and the movement, it was something else. Randy and I were probably the first two almost professional wheelchair athletes, being sponsored and paid through that wheelchair company. And Costa Mesa allowed me to play and compete. They paid me as though I was working any sport.
And that's a rehab facility too, right?
Yeah, it's a rehab facility in Pomona, California. And I had a recreation therapist job there, running a adaptive sports program, and it was a dream job. I mean, I literally was a salaried wheelchair athlete when I wasn't working. I mean, they got some benefit of all that, but I got the most benefit. I was still able to help newly injured in my role as a staff person there, and expose so many people to adaptive sports, and then yet still achieve all my individual sports goals, and be paid.
Did you have any of those people that you helped introduce to the sport, like coming through rehab? Because it's a change in your life, right? You think, okay, I can't do this, I can't do that. And then you start into sport and you go, oh, well, I can do this, I can do that. Did you end up with any of those people who you saw them right at the beginning or close to the beginning, who then ended up competing with you?
Well, all the time. I mean, it would be pretty hard. I mean, just taking part was the big deal. Getting back to life was a big deal. And then, yeah, competing, learning how to play wheelchair tennis, or, learning how to road race and do track. We had all those programs going on, and it was a hotbed. And, it's staggering, Chris, how many nice comments I get from those individuals that now see what's going on in social media, and they tell the story of how I may have helped them, and I get that so much, and it fills my heart so much to hear it. And I'm like, wow, and I just paid attention to everybody. I never threw an elite attitude at people, especially newly injured folks. Man, I was there to help and serve, and that, I have to believe that had so much to do with this induction. Not only was it the stats, which are obvious, but it's everything else. And more recently, the DK3 movement, 20 years of invitational 3-on-3 tournaments, with heavy emphasis and focus on women's opportunities and veterans, colliding and integrating with Paralympians, gold medalists, national champions. And it's been one of the most attractive basketball happenings over the past 20 years. People are in love with it. I can't get away from it.
What's so appealing about it? Why do people love it so much?
Well, really quick to, most 3-on-3 tournaments were designed where you came in with your own 3. And that may have been the same 3 that you've played years with. You might not even like them. Then on the next thing is you've got to move 3 people to expense of a tournament and get that commitment. And and then you had three monsters, three gorillas come in that, oh, dude, nobody's going to beat them.
Right.
You knew. So in my tournaments early on, Shorty Powers motivated it out of Texas to get me to do it. You enter as an individual. I came up with this format. I go, okay, I'll have people just come. I'll make the teams and I'll make parity. I don't have, I'll be fair. And little did I know that structure would carry on for, 2023 will be my 20th year, which I believe will be my grand finale. With the caveat of retirement, that changes. But yeah, so that you get the chance to maybe hook up with a Matt Scott, Steve Serio, Becca Murray, these Paralympians, you might get that draw. And you're not playing with the same people you play with your whole, the whole season with. And that's what, and then throw prize money in there. We have a decent amount of prize money. Some tournaments 20,000, some tournaments 25,000, and boom, you've just got a lot of momentum into positive basketball. That it's just a camaraderie that I can't describe. They're there for the love of the game in the off season, and anyways.
People join as individuals at DK3, right? So I sign up as an individual and I
have to invite you.
Okay. Well, you probably don't want to invite me, really.
No, I didn't mean it like, no. I'm saying it's an invitational though.
Right.
Because I've got to, in order to be able to have the parity, I can't have the talent pool too far separated, from top to bottom. It wouldn't be good for either end of that spectrum. So it's an invitational, and yeah. So then,
how many teams?
This last one in Dallas at UTA was 28 teams playing on 6 to 8 half courts all at one time, and DJ, and branded. It's and organized. We're never late. Everything runs like clockwork, and man, people just come away with like, man, that was so cool, and that's why I've kept doing it, and
so this is 104 athletes. Are they effectively like 104 of the top 120 athletes?
Well, no, because what makes it really good is I can take a certain amount of mid-level players.
Okay.
All right. And that's the beauty of this design, because they're getting the opportunity to play with some of the best in the world, and not just from our country. We have, we've had Australian, Japanese, Canadian, English, we've had people come in and play. And so that's where the real beauty of it is. Like I said, the mid-level player does get the opportunity to play with greats that they've only read about, or seen on TV, or if they're lucky enough, if they're in the Paralympics,
Yeah. So this is the equivalent in some ways of like a college player who might get the chance to, and even possibly like a Division III college player who gets a chance to play with a pro.
Yeah. It's just like that. And it's worked,
That's awesome.
And it's worked. It is a lot of work to get it to work, getting that parity and putting the teams together is a process. But I usually have a tournament director like Doug Garner, the coach of UTA. He'll help me with that, and I got to do a lot of research on players, and but but I've got great sponsors, had the same ones over the years that have allowed the cash flow to cover the costs and to pay the players and you know, but veterans, there's a lot of veterans involved and a lot of women involved on these teams. And I take great pride in that.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. Well, Dave, you said you weren't going to be good for more than 15 minutes. We've blazed through an hour. We didn't talk about your skiing. We didn't talk about your history in basketball prior to being in a wheelchair. We didn't talk about anything. I mean, we actually even got a comment. Eric Bandearly was saying that he has massive respect for you, multi-sport, incredible accomplishments. Not to mention, yeah, you came into skiing. I remember you actually had one of the greatest sort of psych moves that I have seen in the GS in Albertville in 1992. You and Jacques Blanc were going back and forth, and you had kind of put it down on the hip the first round of the GS, I think it was, but I think you were still in first, and he asked you how your run was, and you're like, oh, it was okay. Didn't tell him anything about going down on the hip. Didn't tell him any of that stuff, and let him think that he was within striking distance, and apparently he was not within striking distance because you pulled out that gold. But yeah, so yeah, we didn't even get the chance to talk about a ton of that stuff. But anyway.
I got a little gabby about the wheelchair basketball years and technology and stuff, but
I thought it was super cool stuff.
I won't ever forget that Alpine race, man, because I thought I was over. It was just a quick, the back tail washed out, and then I just leaned to the hill. I came right up, but I thought I was toast, you know, and I just hauled ass the rest of the course, you know. And yeah, that's just a head scratcher that I was able to still win that race. Yeah. Jacques Blanc and I went head to head a lot, and we had a great rivalry.
He was a great skier, that's for sure. Both of you were. So we'll have to get you back because we missed a bunch of the stuff, but it was absolutely awesome. Thanks a ton for joining us. Have a great tournament. Is there a way? I mean, people can go to your website, right? DK3, is that?
Dave Kiley, DK3. Dave Kiley at DK3.com.
Dave Kiley at DK3.com. If people are, yeah. I mean, if people are trying to solicit their way into, hey, I need to get into the tournament. So we'll see how that works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not to give you too many.
Well, I really appreciate it.
No, this was absolutely awesome, man. So thanks a ton for joining us. Really appreciate it. And yeah, we'll look forward to talking next time. Congratulations on the Hall of Fame, and have a great tournament.
Yeah, and same to you, Chris, and your storied career, man. It was great seeing you in Colorado Springs.
Yeah, this was good fun. Well, thanks to all of you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed our time with Dave. The greatest gift you can give us is to tell your friends. Tell your friends to tune in. Tell them to check it out. This will be a traditional podcast later on. So if you can like us, if you can follow us, we'll continue to get great guests and hopefully entertain you. So we'll see you next time.